Hello, 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 and welcome as always to Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk. This is a slightly special episode. Rather than our usual format, this is an extended interview with Monte Cook and Shanna Germain of Monte Cook Publishing. Monte Cook, as you may well know, has been in the gaming industry for 30, 40 years. Started with Iron Crown Enterprises. He was one of the chief architects of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. His Numenera Kickstarter a few years ago was the first tabletop RPG Kickstarter to exceed $500,000. So he's a properly big name in the RPG industry, and if there are any sort of RPG industry rock stars, I think he's probably one of the most qualified to be one. Shanna Germain and he started up Monte Cook Games a few years ago to launch the Numenera line and the entire Cypher System line, which has been going well ever since, with multiple Kickstarters every year. The company has expanded massively, and they've really built something really special there. So this is an interview when I hooked up with them at UK Games Expo. Apologies for the audio quality. We just had the one microphone, and we were in quite a sort of loud. It was a private room, but there was a loud fan running, which Daryl has managed to strip out, but it does mean that some of the voices do sound a bit muffled, so apologies for that. But I think it's a great interview, well worth listening to, especially if you're interested in the history of tabletop RPGs, D&D, Wizard of the Coast, Monte Cook, or Monte Cook games in general. Without further ado, let's do it. Let's listen to the interview. And also, this iPad is a great prop, because without it, I just look really awkward. I'm sitting here like this.
I like it as a prop, yeah.
I hate to tell you anything, Russ. You look pretty awkward with it as well.
Oh.
That is true. He was telling me earlier that I wasn't groomed enough to be on camera. That's what I mean.
Did you say let's switch?
Just run your hand through it. It's what? Like tramping. Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that when you've been in the industry for a long, long time, 25, 30 years, something like that?
Since 1988.
That is quite a long time. So how did you get that first job? I mean, I've heard you say before that this is the only job you've ever really had.
Right, I've never had a real job.
So how do you go from, school or college or something into...
Actually, I started... I was first published when I was still in college.
Right.
And it was really a matter of being in the right place at the right time. I got lucky. A friend of mine who had been playing... At the time, I was playing Iron Crown's Wallmaster.
Sure, yeah.
And a friend of mine went to a big convention in the U.S., Origins, and met some of the guys from Iron Crown.
Right, yeah.
And, did the whole, my GM is so great, you have to hear from him, blah, 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 that thing. And they gave him some writer's guidelines and happened to mention that they were looking for a creatures book.
Right, yeah.
And so he came back and said, here, you have to do this. And he was the kind of guy who was like, you have to do this, and sort of forced it on me. In a good way, right?
So it wasn't really a willing thing. It was.
Yeah, it was. It was probably one of those things that I've been dreaming about for a long time, but I don't know if I'd actually set myself on the road specifically.
Yeah, there wasn't a plan. There wasn't.
Yeah.
What have you done otherwise then? What if in another universe where Monte Cook did not become a game designer? What is Monte Cook?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I had kind of set out to become a teacher.
Right, yeah.
But as I kind of got farther into that, I realized that wasn't for me. And I think, it's almost easier to answer the question if I could go back and read and do it all again, but I couldn't choose game design.
Right, yeah.
I probably would go into science and research.
Sure, yeah.
And things like that. But, I don't know. If I wouldn't end up in game design, I'd be a bum.
Okay. So if you could go back, you would choose game design again, presumably.
I would.
You're very, very happy with how things have turned out.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a while, it wasn't that long ago, I think, where you stopped doing game design for a while, didn't you?
I did.
Did you actually say you were doing it permanently, or?
No, I needed to take a break. I think the phrase that I used was I put it on the back burner.
Sure, yeah.
And I just I think that was right after Tolus came out.
Yeah.
And I was a little burned out.
I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, you wrote that entire thing by hand, didn't you? Every single copy.
Every single copy, handwritten by me.
Yeah, so I can imagine you tried.
Yeah, so, I tried a few other things, done some video games.
Yeah.
Things like that.
I mean, you did a web series as well, didn't you?
Yeah. Geek Seekers.
Geek Seekers.
Yeah.
How was that? Did you enjoy that process?
I loved it very much. It's kind of another passion of mine, is that sort of thing. And, it's a way that I don't really get to express myself.
Yeah.
But so I had a lot of fun.
Sure. Is there more of that in your future, do you think?
I don't know. I did that with Jen Page.
Yeah.
And
he's co-hosting Henny's this year, actually.
That's right. That's
the
right.
Trojan bastard. It'll be fun.
Yeah. And, we both, unfortunately, are just so involved in so many different things that we sort of finished up the first series and, maybe we'll go back, maybe we won't, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I don't want to neglect you, Shanna. I mean, you've had a history in fiction for going back a similar amount of time, haven't you?
Yeah, I actually have almost the opposite of Monte's story in that I have 3 different degrees and worked a myriad jobs in an attempt to avoid doing the thing that I wanted to do, which is be a writer.
Right.
Because I kept thinking, if I try this writer thing and I fail, I don't know what else I would ever do. This is the only thing I've ever wanted to do. So I spent a lot of time avoiding being a writer. And finally gave that up because that wasn't working very well. And then I started as a newspaper journalist, which was great because I learned how to write very fast on a deadline, not be super crazy about the words. Because I'd come from poetry before that, which is all about very slow.
Right, yeah. And when you're writing RPG books, I imagine that can be a disadvantage rather than a...
Yeah, for sure. I meet deadlines. So then I moved into literary fiction, and then I moved into erotica, and then I moved into sort of sci-fi horror, and then moved into the game writing. And of course, I've never left any of those things. I've sort of continued to bring them with me.
How did you transition into the game writing side?
I actually heard, so I was in my mid-30s, so this was almost 10 years ago, and I was listening to a radio program. I was listening to a radio program, and I was working as a successful freelance writer, and I had my own business, and I was playing a lot of MMOs at the time. I didn't have a local gaming group, so I wasn't playing RPGs. And these 2 women were talking on the radio, and there was a study that had come out that had said the growing number of gamers was females who were successful in their mid-30s, and I thought, that is me. That's so awesome. And the 2 women on the program were like, that's impossible. What woman would play a game? How would they have time? They're trying to have a career. And I was so mad at that I actually, I decided right then and there that I was going to start working in the industry. And I started out working for the World of Warcraft magazine and writing articles for them. And so that was sort of my impetus into becoming, not just a gamer, but someone who actually moved the industry forward.
Right, sure. You touched there on, I know you've been on a panel on women in gaming earlier today, and there's a similar panel tomorrow, I believe. What was it you said? Women in their 30s are a growing demographic?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was, like I said, this was probably 10 years ago, and so they were just saying it was they had done some kind of study, and I missed the first part of the interview, and so only heard the backlash against it. But and it was focused on MMOs specifically, and it seemed really interesting to me that I thought I was the only woman in my 30s with a career who was spending her free time, online. I didn't know that there was a whole community out there. So I would imagine that there are still a lot of women who think that they're the only ones out there doing that. So.
Sure. And when you're talking about tabletop RPGs, do you feel that demographic is growing also?
Yeah, it's an interesting demographic because it grows so differently than computer games, where you have to go to the store and buy it, or you have to know someone. Like, you can just know one person to find a video game sort of partner, but to find someone to play an RPG with is more of a group. It's more cultural, and so because of the way that spreads out, I think there's more opportunity for it to spread into all different kinds of areas. It does seem like we're seeing more women, especially young women, which is great. And it does seem like we're seeing more women come in who actually want to be part of the industry and who want to work in the field. And that's really exciting.
And there's some great examples of women in the industry. Like Lisa Stevens is a fantastic role model, I think. Nicole Juice, people like that. There's some wonderful role models, I think. Yeah. So if we could sort of jump back in time again to you at Iron Crown. So, what was it like working in the industry at that time? I mean, compared to today, where it seems to me that the industry is, it's more polished today. It's more experienced. It knows, back then, was it more experimental? Was it?
In a way, it was. So I came in probably right at sort of the end of that kind of, hey, we've got a game group, let's make ourselves a game company and publish a game sort of era that existed then. And it's funny to look back because all the major players in the industry, right up all the way to the top, TSR, they're all different now. And so it's been interesting to watch that evolve and to see not just that it happened, but how it happened and kind of, what people did right and what people did wrong. And, there was, I think that probably the big difference was back then everyone was a gamer, which is great, but not necessarily everyone was a publisher or a business person, which is not as great.
That's necessarily true these days either.
Well, but that is true. But it's so different now because the barriers for entry have sort of shifted in that if you're an avid gamer who just really wants to get their thing out there, there's so many venues you don't have to actually get funding and capital and get a bunch of employees.
There's been a couple of big shifts. Like I think you were one of the people who spearheaded PDF publishing.
Yeah.
Was it more than 10 years ago?
2001, yeah.
It's nearly 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was early
that
on.
changed everything.
Yeah,
right?
and then, of course, Kickstarter comes along 10 years later and does the same thing again.
Exactly.
Each time the barriers to entry are lowering each time.
Yeah, I think that's true, which I think is a good thing because it infuses the industry with, new ideas and creativity and the idea that there might be people out there who have some wonderful ideas but can't get in because someone told them no.
Yeah,
well, now there's so many ways to get around that. With Kickstarter.
Yeah, and obviously you've benefited from that yourself as well. Twice, very, very successfully.
Yeah, we're very very grateful to the advent of Kickstarter.
Are you familiar with the Millie Cook concept?
The what?
The Millie Cook.
Millie Cook?
Because we're Millie Wheaton.
Oh.
So, if a cook is $500,000.
I see where this is going. All right.
I think I even made a chart at one point. I think Kevin Kolb is a tenth of a Millie Cook or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, you were at TSR for a long time. So you saw TSR evolve
and devolve
and transition over to Wizards. Right. I mean, what was that like? That experience and moving from TSR to Wizards. I mean, was there a fear of your job security? Were people worried? Or?
Well, so in 96 and 97, things at TSR got really bad.
Yeah.
And for a while there, TSR just stopped publishing altogether because they owed the printer too much money to get them to keep going. And that was a scary time. Everyone, worried about their job and everything. And so ironically, the big fear at TSR was that they were going to, that TSR would be bought out by Hasbro.
Right. Lucky that never happened.
Because at the time, Hasbro had a reputation of kind of coming in, buying up all the intellectual property and firing all the staff.
Right. Yeah.
And so, we were afraid of that. So Wizards of the Coast, in so many ways, was kind of a godsend that, Peter Atkinson came in, was a huge D&D fan, wanted to come in and help the company and save the brand and everything. And so that was all really great. The transition was, I think, rougher than he thought it was going to be, just in terms of, you can almost imagine any kind of situation where you've got a group of people, who are doing creative, interesting things, and then another group of people who are doing creative, interesting things. You can't just smash them together and expect it to all go smoothly.
Yeah. But Peter, what's he like to work under?
Peter's great. Peter's a really good guy, and I find him really pleasant to be around. And
I've only met him a couple of times, but he's always been very, very pleasant.
Yeah, and I worked with him directly when we were working on third edition because at least at the start of third edition, he took a real hands-on approach, and attended a lot of the meetings and whatnot that we had.
Was there a lot of Peter's vision in third edition then?
There was a lot of initial directives. Peter was a big fan of first edition and not a big fan of second edition.
Right, okay.
And so that was kind of the initial course that we were given. I can remember, little sort of specific things like, the whole idea that NPCs and PCs use exactly all the same rules, right down to monsters and everything, was something that Peter really wanted. And, the ability to create, to facilitate high-level play was also really important to Peter. Yeah. So things like that, kind of, if you want to say it that way, came down from on high.
Yeah, sure. But of course, you ended up being one of the core team working on that game.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
So it was right after we came to Wizards of the Coast. So this was late 1997. And basically they put out a call to everyone working in the department saying, if you'd like to work on the design team, write up a document about what you would do if you could create a new edition.
Okay, so you had an audition for the...
Basically, yeah. And...
did many people do that?
I think just about everybody.
Or was it just 3 people?
No, working on the new edition, I think, is sort of the gem assignment. So I think just about everybody put their ideas forth. And initially, it was Skip Williams and Rich Baker and I.
Right, yeah. And so you spent, 2-3 years working on that edition?
Almost 3 years.
I mean, that must have been quite a time, because you must have known something big was happening at the time.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that things were actually fairly dire for D&D. And so there was a lot of pressure on us that if third edition was a failure, D&D probably was not
it would be your fault.
Right. I mean, second edition sales were terrible by the late 90s, and things were not good. It was succeed or die.
There was a sense of, we're trying to save D&D. Was that the overall feeling there?
There was. But, that feeling ever since the Wizards of the Coast buyout was kind of pervasive, right? Yeah. This idea that, and it's actually something that means a lot to me personally, which is this idea that D&D means more than just something that a company's brand, or even more than just a game, right? That it is this experience, this cultural phenomena, this thing that meant so much to me and millions of other people.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I was reading something that Ryan Dancy said just the other. You can say the other day. I was reading it the other day, and he mentioned that one of his goals of the OGL was to make sure that D&D could never be removed from the market by the I can't talk. Capricious decisions of its publisher,
right?
And that he feels he succeeded in that particular goal.
Yeah.
I mean, was that just him, or was that a thing that other people felt as well?
I think that was something that everybody, it took Ryan a while to kind of sell the company on the OGL. And I think it took him a while to sell the creative team as well, but I think it took him less time with us than it did with more.
Was he alone spearheading that then?
To begin with, I mean, it is really to his credit. He is sort of the architect of that whole concept. Because initially, we thought, well, we didn't understand. Well, why are we going to allow other people?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But, basically it was what you just said that sold me, this idea that this ensures that D&D will always be around, no matter what.
Yeah, of course, then, Paizo come along and pick up one branch of D&D while Wizards of the Coast continue on another.
Right.
So then you end up with multiple D&Ds.
Right.
So, although they might not have that name, but, they are... they're multiple D&Ds, and
right. Well, I mean, that's certainly the sort of weird situation that I don't know that anyone ever predicted, was that the number one role playing game in the world would be D&D, and the second would be D&D.
Yes,
and the contention is merely which D&D is actually which is which.
Yeah.
But it's interesting times.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the OGL is something you used yourself as well a little later when you started Malhava. When you left Wizard of the Coast in the early 2000s.
2001.
2001. That was, what was that, shortly after Peter Atkinson left?
It was.
What was the reason for you leaving?
Well, there were a lot of reasons. And, none of them were sort of ill will or anything like that. In fact, I kept working as a freelancer.
Yeah.
Did a few things, Ghost Walk, Book of Wild Darkness. So there was none of that. But part of it was me. I think I work better when there aren't people in suits kind of standing above me telling me what, I shouldn't
it's an
write.
environmental thing.
Yeah. But, I could also see sort of, the winds of change were blowing. And that, with Peter leaving and, it was clearly becoming more of a business.
Right, yeah.
Or it was always a business, but always more of just a business.
Did you leave before? No, that was after it went to Hasbro, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, so
it was 2000, I think.
Yeah, so that presumably would have quite a big sort of corporate effect on the corporate environment at Wizards.
It did, yeah.
Yeah. So you move over to, start running your own company, which I assume is a very different set of skills to writing, D&D for Wizards of the Coast.
Right.
You're not just writing D&D for yourself, essentially, but you're running a business, you're running a company. I mean, did you have the skills at the start necessarily to do that? Did you learn those as it went along, or?
Not that I knew of. Although I think Ryan, who you mentioned, once said somewhere, he wrote somewhere that I was the best brand manager that he had ever seen, in that the brand that I was managing was Monte Cook.
Yes. We'll get on to that in a bit.
And, but that's all, if that's true, it's really just happenstance. I never set out to be a small business owner or anything like that. So much of what I've done has just come out of necessity. You mentioned PDFs.
Yes.
And, I started with a PDF, the Book of Eldritch Might.
Yes.
And, I did that not because I was thinking to myself, oh, this is the wave of the future. I'm so smart.
A movement. Yeah.
And it was the only way I knew how to get the product out
right,
there.
Yeah. So you can't take the credit at all.
No, it's just, I do
it was an exciting time. That book was, you weren't the only person doing it. You certainly, I don't know if you were the first, but you're certainly one of the first, weren't you? Right at the start.
So much so, I still remember very clearly staying up almost all night, just scouring the internet, looking for somebody who had already done this, so that I could just do it the way they did.
Oh, so you actually were the first.
Well, there were a couple of people who were, they were doing, they would release their PDF for free, but then they would encourage you to.
Didn't Neckmask Games do that?
They released a free PDF, but there were some people who were releasing free PDFs, but then asking you to please PayPal them some money.
Right. Okay.
But there was no system, right? There was.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to jury rig something together.
That certainly worked.
Yeah, it was an exciting time. I remember. Well, it's interesting because at the time I could see not just how many sales I was getting, but who I could by name.
Right. Yeah.
And so Eric Noah was customer number one.
Was he?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I was probably number two. I'll be in that list somewhere. Yeah. So about Havoc Press. You ran Havoc Press for 8 years or so.
Well, technically it's still going on, but the last product that Malhavoc published was in 2007.
And one of the freelancers you used was an up-and-rising chap called Mike Mulls.
That's right.
He wrote Iron Heroes for you.
That's right.
So what's Mike Mulls like to work with? Both as an employee or as a freelancer, then later as a co-worker at Wizards.
That's right. Mike's a very creative guy, very hardworking, and, very interested in kind of matching the game to the player's expectation, right? And what the player's needs. And so, he and I kind of conceived of Iron Heroes together, but really it was more just kind of I had this initial idea and he took it ran with it and did all these amazing things with it. So all that credit goes to him as to how to match. It was just this really wonderful way to create a way to use the D20 system without magic.
Right. Yeah. Of course. So if I could jump back to Shanna for a moment, is it a similar situation for you in the when you started, running your own sort of business as opposed to just writing? Was that any set of skills you had to learn?
Yeah, wow, it's so long ago that I'm trying to remember. I think that similar to Monte, it sort of it happens that I have those skills.
Right.
I didn't always know that I had them, but as soon as I sort of got into that experience, I
discovered, hey, I'm really good at doing it.
Yeah, I was delighted to find that I was good at it, because one of the things that, of course, they don't teach you in any kind of creative education is how to run the business aspects.
Yeah, exactly.
And so if I had not had those, and actually pretty quickly discovered that most people didn't have them who were writers, and that surprised me because I assumed it kind of came as a package deal.
Right, yeah.
And actually started helping my friends do things like manage submissions and keep track of their taxes, because it was something that the creative that right and left brain thing doesn't always join the way that it should.
One thing I see said to people online frequently when they talk about self-publishing their own works is, do you want to be a writer or a publisher? Because they are, they're not the same job, they're not the same thing. And invariably, they tend to want to be a writer rather than a publisher. They want to write their stuff and get it out there. But I mean, becoming a publisher as well, it's just kind of a leap of faith, isn't it, in a sense? In that, you're not
a leap of well-researched faith, perhaps. I think that it is, if only there was sort of a diagram that explained all of the parts of being a publisher, of which writing is probably the most important, but also one of many, right? Yes. I mean, if you don't have a great book, then all of the social media and taxes and all of those things, it doesn't matter. But I do think that, the publishing aspect takes up a lot of creative energy, surprisingly, because it seems like it's very business focused. But when you're doing that for a creative product, there is a lot of crossover. And so you have to know kind of how many tools you have in your toolbox and how often you can use them. Like if I spend all my time writing a great marketing blog post, have I just pulled from something else that I should be writing for a book? How do you manage that time and creative resource, I think, is the hard part.
Would you enjoy that side of it, though, this business, running successfully running a business?
Sometimes. There are times when it actually is like playing an elaborate game, and bringing all these pieces together and making it work, and coming out with a great looking book, sort of like the victory condition. And so in that way I do, but I also agree with Shanna that sometimes you feel like you're spending all your time working on, a marketing plan or talking to salespeople or whatever.
Which is kind of not what you got into it to do.
Exactly. And I'd really much rather be writing about dragons and laser.
I've noticed, and I'm sure it's exactly the same for you, but I've run a couple of Kickstarters, and I find that the actual process of running the Kickstarter is you're doing this for a month, you're thinking, I want to get back to writing my game. That's what I want to be doing. But no, I'm doing admin and marketing and publicity and things like that. And this isn't, that's not the goal. That's not what you want to do.
Right. It's kind of the necessary evil. It's the hoops you have to jump through in order to be able to write your game.
Unless you get to employ people to do that for you.
Exactly.
So you went back to Wizards a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I know you can't talk much about this, but are you able to talk about how that came about?
Well, so basically Mike Merles came to me and, kind of told me what was going on and that they were working on a new edition, and they had sort of looked at some of the past successes and some of the past failures and wanted to recreate some of the successes and avoid some of the failures. Okay. And so brought me on, and basically, again, it was sort of a situation where, people were starting to talk about things like, we have to save D&D.
Right, okay.
And that's a soft spot for me.
So for a second time, it was, we have to say D&D, cool Monte Cook.
Well, yeah, but the weird thing is that in a way, I kept thinking to myself, I've already done this,
Yes.
right? I've already created the D&D, or helped create the D&D that I love and want, and so it felt a little odd to be coming back, but at the same time, D&D is very important to me.
Right, sure. I mean, you mentioned that one of the reasons you originally left was because, you started to find a corporate environment less comfortable to work in. Did you find that a challenge going back again after having run your own?
I did, but I always, when Mike approached me and what I agreed to and everything, it was always a short-term thing.
Yeah.
It was never I actually never was an employee the second time. I was always a contractor. That was always the intention. I mean, I knew that I was
just so you could leave again, wasn't it? The only person who left was the coast twice.
Is that? I don't. Maybe willingly.
Yes. The only person who wasn't laid off. Yeah. So, I mean, you stayed, you stayed there for a few months.
It was almost a year.
It was almost a year. And I assume, I know you can't talk about it, that, in the 5th edition, as it's now called, is probably, bears quite a lot of your footprints on it.
I actually have no idea.
Have you not seen the playtest documents in the last
not since I left.
Oh, right. Right. I presume you'll be buying a copy.
I hope so. I hope to, yeah. As soon as it comes out.
But we'll move on from that, because I know you, much as I'd love to, grill you about your time at Wizards, I know you can't talk about that very much. So let's move on to the fun stuff.
Okay.
So let's move on to Monte Cook Games.
Okay.
So you and Shanna founded Monte Cook Games.
That's right.
So did you know you were going to do that before you left Wizards? Did you leave and then think, what am I going to do now? Oh my God, I better find a company. What
kind
was
of. That's not that far from the truth. It was really sort of a... Monte Cook Games was actually never meant to be this company. It was really just a name to publish under. I knew I didn't want it. I knew I didn't want Numenera to be Malhada Press,
right?
Because Malhada Press means D20, and it sort of means something else.
Yeah, okay.
And so we had to call it something.
We were only going to do one little tiny book.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
So, if you had to, really, really had to, one of you had to take credit for the idea, Numenera.
Oh, that's all Monte.
Is that Monte?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
that was me. Yeah.
That was something that you had, 20 years ago and kind of put on the back burner for a really long time, right? I mean,
yeah, a lot of the ideas that became Numenera were actually ideas that I had back in the early 90s, but had to kind of shelve because I had been hired by TSR.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So you began working on Numenera. Did you know at first that it was going to be a Kickstarter? Or did that come later?
Yes. I had basically, after leaving Wizards, I was just fascinated by Kickstarter, just as a sort of a phenomenon. I've been watching it very closely and backing projects. And
Rebirth, things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So incredibly well.
Yeah. And I was just fascinated by it, and I wanted to try it, if for no other reason than to
7 Cooks, by the way, Rebirth.
Was that
7 Cooks? How does it feel to be a standard unit?
Odd.
But anyway, we were...
it was something that we talked about, both of us. We really wanted to just try it and see if we could make it work.
Well, and we, when you had originally brought the idea, you had said that, it was something that you were really passionate about, and we didn't know if anyone else would be interested in it. So it was also kind of a trial to see, here's this totally new idea from someone who's really known for D20 games that breaks a lot of the molds and goes in all kinds of different ways. And so, the sort of passion behind it from you was not going to allow you to not make it. And so we really wanted to see whether other people would be interested in it. Kickstarter seems such a great way to sort of explore those waters.
Because it does the market research for you as well at the same time as the fundraising.
Exactly.
And if people aren't interested, then
you know.
Before
time and money.
Yeah.
And then we're like, well, we'll have to actually get real jobs.
So, Kickstarter. You start your Kickstarter. I mean, we've spoken about this before, but you asked what was it, 20,000?
Yeah, the initial goal is 20.
And you end up with exactly one cook. Surprisingly. but about, approximately $500,000, which is an astonishing amount. It really is, incredible. And I think it's probably fair to say that your name was part of that.
Yes. I mean, I was a known quantity.
Yeah.
Having my name on the Player's Handbook Dungeon Master Guide did not hurt it.
You've earned it, certainly. I mean, that's your reward for all those years of hard work, isn't it?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. but where I was going with this was it's not just the name. It was a very well managed Kickstarter.
Well, and I want to put into you can't overlook Kieran Yander's artwork, which I think really kind of blew people away right away on the Kickstarter page. I think a lot of people took a look at that and they said, "Oh, this isn't just the same old thing." So I give Kieran a lot of credit.
Cool. And I think what is also impressive is I know there were big Kickstarters before yours, but I think yours inspired people as well. I think you kind of showed people what could be done.
Yeah.
I mean, not everyone's going to make $500,000 and produce a Numenera, but you showed people that people could achieve. I was inspired by it. I launched Kickstarters because you did.
Good.
And I saw, and I even studied your Kickstarter and thought, right, how did they structure it? How did they do it? What can I learn from this?
Well, one of the things that I'm happiest about in that regard is that what I think the Numenera Kickstarter really did was it showed people that the audience out there is very interested still in RPGs. Because people kept saying, "Oh, RPGs are dying. No one's playing them anymore. No one cares." And here's a brand new RPG, brand new setting. It's not a license. It's not anything. And it breaks some records at the time. And I think that did really kind of show people and make people realize, oh, maybe RPGs are still around for a while.
And you shared your advice in the form of an ebook on how it works successful. You both worked on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it and read it myself. I used much of the advice. I think one particular piece of advice is the advice you give is that running a Kickstarter is a full-time job in itself. It's you can't just start a Kickstarter, sit down, look at it again 30 days later, and go, why didn't that fund? I don't understand. You're doing stuff every day.
Right, absolutely. Posts and replying to people's questions.
So how do you guys find that process? Do you find that arduous? Do you find it exciting?
Well, it's interesting because so now we've done 2 big ones, and they were very different experiences for us. I think. Okay. But so the first one was very much a surprise. We did a ton of research beforehand to see what was successful for Kickstarters. Mm-hmm. And yet, the fact that it grew so big and so fast, we felt like we were always sort of playing catch up.
Right.
And the other thing that I think that I at least didn't expect was the passion of the fans, not just about the game, but about the ability to connect with us during that process.
Okay.
Right. It was like, I think one of the interesting things about Kickstarter, specifically with RPGs, is that we have such a passionate fan base who really wants to interact, and this is a great opportunity for them to do so. And to take a role and to be active and to participate. And we weren't prepared for that. So that was more time than we expected, but it was just so wonderful to be able to see fans have those kinds of reactions and to be integrated with them in that way. And so we prepared for that a lot better, I think, in the second Kickstarter. We understood that it wasn't just about us putting the things out there. It was about that interaction and always being responsive and so we had a lot more done ahead of time in terms of a lot more. We were just more prepared. We had a schedule and we had a better understanding of how much time it took because it is so time consuming. And we knew that during the time we ran the Kickstarter, we really couldn't work on the product. It just wasn't. There just isn't enough time in the day to do both. So.
Yeah. So the second one, I mean, had you at that point modify your expectations as to what was going to happen? That didn't blindside you again, did it?
Well, it still exceeded our expectations, but it didn't. With Numenera just bowled us over.
Yeah, of course.
And with the Strange, we had a little bit more accurate way of looking at what we thought would happen. We still surpassed that, but
I think we definitely. One of the great things about the first Kickstarter is that not only did it create, a series, a whole game line and a series of books. It actually created a company, right? Because originally it was just, Monte and I were like, we're going to make a book. And then by the time that
so you
Kickstarter
weren't
was
initially
over,
going to do all these different books for Numenera. You were literally just going to leave it at the one.
yeah, we were just going to have one small black and white.
Well, with $20,000,
You're actually, in a sense, in the process of 1 month during the process of one Kickstarter, you totally rewrite your next few years, your vision of...
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you had asked me, the month prior to us launching the Numenera Kickstarter, what are you going to be doing in May of 2014? It wouldn't probably have been this.
It's an astonishing thing, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, I gather you're certainly a big fan of Kickstarter.
Oh, very much so.
How do you think it's affecting the industry as a whole?
I think that it's extremely positive. Just to continue to use Numenera as an example, we never would have been able to do a book that was 416 pages full color with the print run that we did and the follow-up products. I mean, and I think that's true for a lot of other people as well. Maybe true for you as well that you couldn't even done a project
anything
without it, right? So it is enabling this amazing creative force that drives our industry, right? I mean, it's the games and the worlds and the settings and the ideas that kind of keep our little industry going.
It's suddenly ushering in one of those exciting times again.
Yeah.
You feel this sort of buzz. I don't know if I'm making sense here, but this energy that you can see everywhere with everyone.
I do.
At the moment.
Yeah, and from what I hear, RPGs are doing better than ever, or not maybe better than ever, but better than the last 5 or 6 years. In stores and retail, and I definitely think that we're in a boom period.
I think we are too.
Yeah.
So you are. Historically, I would say that you're sort of known for heavy, crunchy games. When you worked for Iron Crown Enterprises back in the day, and they produced, Rockmaster, which is not exactly rules light.
Right, exactly.
Of course, D&D 3rd edition is rules light either. That's quite an intricate, heavy game.
Exactly.
Because Numenera, on the other hand, is, it's a very rules light game. What's the big change there? Is your personal taste changed? Or?
I totally understand that question, and I totally see why it seems like a big change. But the real truth of it is that I like lots of different kinds of games, and this was just the opportunity for me to do something different than I had done before.
Right.
But it's not like I, don't like D&D 3rd edition anymore,
of course.
or that I wouldn't have liked Numenera 10 years ago. We play a variety of different games, and
in fact, I was going to interject with something about that. What are you guys currently gaming at?
well, it is mostly Numenera.
And our Numenera space hack.
Yeah, I've hacked Numenera into a space opera game.
Interesting.
And OD&D.
Yeah, about once a month.
Yeah, I think I saw something on the intrawebs about you running an OD&D game. Is that?
Yeah, it is. I'm finding it very refreshing to go back to those roots. I started playing D&D with OD&D, and it's enlightening in a lot of ways to see the game and how it started, and in so many ways to see how this game that became a phenomenon as it was written is almost unplayable, right? And so, but I see that as a good thing, not a bad thing, right? Because what it forced everyone to kind of inject their own creativity into it.
No, I was like, my gaming group, Alan over there is one of my gaming group. We experimented with an old AG's game about a year and a half ago. We were playing through it, and I was like running this game, and I suddenly realised at one point, hang on, this game doesn't actually have a task resolution mechanic anywhere.
No.
It tells you how to generate characters. It tells you what all the skills mean and stuff. It doesn't tell you how to resolve. It doesn't show you how to pick a lock.
Right.
And I'm like, I played this in the 80s. I knew how to do it, but how did I know that? It's not in the book.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? That we all just sort of, figured it out. And not, we didn't all just figure it out. We all figured it out in the way that we wanted to, right? So if someone wanted it to be really complicated, they created their own. And if someone else just wanted to say, you open the lock.
Sure.
That worked.
I mean, my first experience was my parents bought me, it was a Warhammer battle box set. It was a box and it had 3 black and white books in it. It was a yellow box. I can't remember which one it was, but it was a tabletop miniatures thing which you use ruler and measure out inches. It was that sort of thing. Because I didn't know what a tabletop battle game was. I'd never seen one. I'd never heard of one. And somehow I took it to school. Took my friends. Hey, got this for Christmas. It's amazing. We started playing it. We played it like a role-playing game. But we'd never heard of a role-playing game either. So we had a set of tabletop battle rules, and we were essentially running characters through a dungeon. Pretty much. In the sense of a role-playing game, and we just made that up by ourselves without any...
Well, it's very true to the roots of the game, right? That everything sort of started as a war game, but I think that speaks a lot to the power of role-playing, right? That it just sort of... It feels natural to start to kind of treat these game pieces as characters and assign to them, personalities.
Sure, yeah. So, The Strange is, jump subject there, but we're kind of running short on time and I wanted to cover it.
Okay.
Because they're going to kick it out. They said they were going to kick us out at 4 o'clock and it's just gone.
All right.
Shanna, you go to the door. Yeah, so The Strange kickstarted last year. Mm-hmm. It's due for release, Gen Cons?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. I'm definitely picking it up, without a doubt. Now, Bruce, as has been said in numerous interviews and kind of articles and things, he's an old friend of yours, and you brought him into the company from Wizards of the Coast to work on The Strange. How did you end up? Did you have to persuade Bruce to leave Wizards and say, "Hey, come work for me on this idea of yours," or did Bruce approach you? How
well, I came to Bruce, but it didn't take a lot of convincing.
Right. Okay.
The original idea for The Strange is Bruce's, and so he and I had been talking, and I knew that he had been kind of kicking around this idea that he was thinking about in terms of fiction, and it just sort of all clicked together. Oh, this should be a game.
Yeah.
And so coming to him and seeing if he wanted to join us, it just all felt very natural. Sort of the next step.
I think you mentioned last time we spoke you hadn't really worked directly with Bruce all that much over the years.
Not on anything that actually got finished.
Well,
we did
finish The Strange, though.
there were a few things here and there, but for the most part, no. He and I worked together when we were both working for Wizards at the same time, this most recent time, on 5th edition. At that time, it was Bruce and I and Rob Schwal were sort of the main design team. And now Rob is
with you
freelance with us as well.
One day, Mike Wells. And the trifecta will be complete.
But it all just kind of came together naturally. I think it's appealing to anybody to after working in a corporate environment for a lot of years to have somebody probably come to you and say, "Hey, how would you like to write exactly what you want to write, and this idea that you've been kicking around, let's publish that."
Sure.
So I don't think it was hard to convince Bruce to join us.
What is the sort of day-to-day environment in Monte Games then?
Well, we don't have a central office.
Right.
We're all working our own respective offices. And so that means that...
You're all very local to each other, aren't you?
No, we're not, actually. Well, Bruce is very close, but we also work with Charles Ryan and Tammy Ryan, and they're halfway across the country.
Okay, I don't know the geography of
No. We're way over on the left,
places,
and they're sort of in the middle.
There's the West Coast, there's New York, there's Texas, is there more? Is there?
They're in the middle there somewhere.
Charles is a lovely, lovely person. Right?
Yes.
I've always enjoyed talking to Charles. So,
yeah.
Another person who used to be at Wizards of the Coast.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so our real philosophy is to really support that creativity. Is that you work when you want to work, from your home or wherever you want to work. And if you get your work done, then, there's no other constraints, right? So you don't have to take days off for being sick. You don't have to take, you just have this.
There's no clock to punch.
Yeah, there's nobody watching you.
Everyone's working as salaried employees as opposed to freelancers, right?
Yes, the core 5 members of the team.
Yeah, and so we really try to create it because we're all creative, but we've all worked in corporate places that accidentally often squelch that creativity and sort of make you fight against it.
So you know what mistakes not to make.
We hope.
It's not that we haven't made mistakes.
But it is hard. We meet once a week via G+. We typically run a play test once a week as a team, and so we try to do things that we have summits where we actually get together in person. So it's really wonderful that we're all able to do our own thing in our own places, but it's also we work hard to make sure that we come together as a team and are able to connect too. Because it's really easy to get kind of lost in doing.
Yeah, I mean, how do you deal with that sort of spread out kind of?
The internet makes it pretty easy, to be honest. And we've all worked in corporate environments before, and so we know what it's like. It's very, very common for me to say to Charles or to Tammy, if we were in the same building, I would just walk by and look into your office or your cubicle or whatever and say this to you, but I can't have that. So let's have a G+ meeting about this.
Right,
and, we have to kind of formalize things that would otherwise be sort of more casual in another setting.
Is that a disadvantage, do you think?
A little bit.
We miss the sort of casual brainstorming creativity conversations because things have to be scheduled.
We get to immediately bounce something off something.
We're not just sitting around. And actually, we do that a lot because we're in closer proximity. And so that we tend to have these sort of things. And I think that Tammy and Charles do as well. And so I think we miss out on some of that sort of inspiration kind of collective that happens when you're in the same place. But we have such an amazing team. I mean, I don't know that the system that we have would work with other teams. We have an amazing team who's super passionate, does a great job at what they do. We're really communicative, and we're able to work out issues. And so I just feel like, I don't know that I recommend our system to anyone else because they have to have this core team that's super incredible to make it work.
Yeah.
And so it works for us. We are thinking about if we grow, will we need to make changes, right? Because the bigger you get, of course, the more the pieces there are. And so.
And I would say growth is in the plan, in the roadmap, is it?
It definitely could be.
Yeah,
we now have 2 game lines, or we will come August.
Yeah.
And that isn't just twice as much writing and twice as much editing, but it's twice as much contact with artists and twice as much salespeople and twice as much everything, right? And so we're kind of bursting at the seams a bit in terms of all of us having a bit too much to do, yeah. So
when you have eventually recruited everyone from Wizards of the Coast, I mean, would it be easy just to move into their offices? Just call yourself sorcerers of the shore.
Well, it is actually a huge advantage to have people who basically, most of us at MCG have roles that we have had before.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to tell Charles, well, here's how to write a marketing plan for a role-playing game because he's done it for Dungeons and Dragons, right? That's a huge advantage. In fact, I don't even know if it would be possible if we didn't already all have the experience that we have.
Yeah, it is the fact that everyone is such a perfect fit for their spot that allows us to be such a cohesive and productive team. Because really, the amount of products that we're putting out for Team of 5 is kind of blows me away often. And there are some times of course, getting ready for Gen Con right now is a big, huge, with 2 game lines, a brand new core book, a player's guide, and our big technology guide for Numenera. It has been pretty tight. But that it wouldn't have even been possible if everybody wasn't just so perfect in their roles. We would have just been. And it's really important to us, right? Especially as the fans who backed our Kickstarter put a lot of trust in us. They put trust in us that we'll get things out that are great, that will get them out on time. And so we're willing to sort of go that extra mile and do that extra amount of work behind the scenes to make sure that those things happen.
You mentioned earlier about the direct contact with brands that you enjoy and you think is a productive thing. I mean, that's an aspect of just modern day, social networking and, brands of, most games do have direct access. designers from, even from Wizard of the Coast, people still tweet Wayne Knowles, for example.
Right.
And of course, you're a great ambassador on Twitter and places like that because you're always talking to people. I see you all the time. So, I mean, you enjoy that, I take it. That's a part of the process that you find pleasant.
I have always enjoyed. I don't actually even really like the word fans. I've just always enjoyed the company of gamers and interacting with gamers. And when I go to a convention, I'm more likely to be found sort of in the general gaming area than hanging around with the industry people in the bar or something, because that's how I see myself. I'm a big game.
Sure. Okay.
And so. That comes very naturally, I think, to both of us, right? To interact with people, and it just people know that when you're interacting with them, people are smart. They can tell whether you've I'm being Mr. Marketer now, or whether you're just sort of talking to them. I think, and
I'm actually really grateful for the internet that way, because I'm very shy and I'm very introverted, and so what things like Twitter allow me to do is not be quite so shy and not be quite so introverted.
Right.
So it's a great opportunity for me to interact socially in a way that's actually really difficult for me in person. It allows me to be there when I'm there, and I can interact in a way that's positive and really fun and engaging, but I don't get sort of all overwhelmed by my own shyness stuff.
I think I've seen you in particular mentioning you sometimes struggle with some of the negativity you see on the web.
Sometimes that's hard. It comes with passion, right? That fans are so passionate and they're so wonderful. And yet at the same time, I think that they don't, it's sort of like you're standing at a cocktail party and hearing someone talk badly about you. And they don't realize that you're there, right? And so it's sort of this kick in the gut kind of feeling, because the internet is a cocktail party that everyone's invited to.
Exactly. Everyone can see what you're saying.
Right. And so it's not like you're standing in the corner of a private party talking about someone who's 3,000 miles away and can't hear you. But, and the only reason that that's actually hard is because we want the fans to love what we do. We want them to have a great time, and we want to give them what they want. And so, to me, it's really different. If someone doesn't like the game, that's great. That's awesome, right? Negative reviews, stuff like that don't, everybody's tastes are different, and we're not for everyone, and that's awesome. As long as you find something that you love, awesome. It's just really this sort of negativity, especially negativity that implies that we aren't working hard, right? Because we're just busting our butts to make great stuff. And so, or just negativity for negativity's sake, I think is tough. But I wouldn't take that away, right? I don't want to strip people of passion, because with passion comes that really amazing joy and wonder and desire to make games better. And so, I don't know, it's hard, but it brings good stuff with it. So,
do you think something about this industry? Do you think, car fans say mean things about the guy who designed the tyres on the latest BMW? Or, I mean, is it...
I've been told that yes, that is exactly what happens, right? And there are forums where...
So it's literally just the internet then, it's everything.
I think so.
Well, I also think, perhaps, and I don't know if this is true, but the guy who designed the cars for the BMW isn't reading the forum about designing cars for the BMW, tires for the BMW. But game designers, because we're so close to our fans... Right, and often fans are like, have you seen this? Where they're like pointing out the thing where.
Well, of course, that's a bad analogy. Actors, perhaps.
Right, for sure.
Although there is a funny series of actors reading.
Oh, yes, I have seen that.
I should totally do that. That would be so much fun.
But do you sort of like, I know, certainly I've seen, actors a bit, but do you ever sort of rein yourself back from actually looking at things that will be about you, just because you know there's going to be negativity there, because that is just how the internet works, and you just rather not see it?
Sometimes I do that, but if I think that there's going to be something constructive that comes out of it, then I will take a look. But sometimes there is just sort of a sense of I know I've been on the internet a long time. I know the places where are going to be friendly and unfriendly.
Yeah, don't be all.
And so I don't see any reason in sort of wallowing or dwelling on the stuff that's negative.
Right, because it can really impede your creativity if you right. I mean, we've seen so many people leave the game industry or the video game industry lately, right, because of the negativity of fans.
Right.
And there have been death threats, and there have been all this other stuff, and what fans, I think what people don't realize is the impact of their comments, right? I mean, great creators are leaving the industry because that's so rough. But having been a writer for 20-some years, I have pretty thick skin, and I actually actively search out that stuff, partly because sometimes it's creative, and partly because I can turn that around and make it a positive experience for them, right? And so if someone is angry because of something, a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding, and they don't actually, they're saying, whatever they're saying, it might not be true, or they might have, I can give them some information that will change their experience for the better. That's not always true. Sometimes people just want to be mad, and that's cool too, right? I mean, but if I can make their experience better with the game or just the industry, then I want to do that. Provided that it doesn't take time out from, my real job, which is making stuff.
I mean, have you ever received any particularly personal tweets or comments or emails? Have to tell me what they are or not?
Yes.
I mean, you find that hurtful? You find that hard to deal with? Is that a struggle? Or can you just dismiss it and just say, this person's crazy? I don't need to read this.
It is actually fairly easy to dismiss that kind of thing. Because first of all, it's the internet, so you have no idea, right? That might be some 12-year-old kid.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Or someone who needs help in other ways. But actually, to be really honest with you, and maybe this sounds a little too Pollyanna-ish. The negativity that I find most troubling online is not necessarily the negativity about me or my work or anything like that. It's the negativity that I see among gamers, right? The edition wars, the all of that. You're playing this game wrong. Your game isn't a true role-playing game. Those kinds of things. And it, I hate to see what should be a hobby that brings us together tear us apart that way. And, in a self-serving way, that hurts me, and it hurts Shanna, and it hurts you. I mean, it hurts everybody if, the more fractured and divisive that we become.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have a sort of meta level to that, because people then blame different companies for causing that.
Right.
That very fracture that they're part of.
Right.
So it kind of feeds on itself.
It does. And it's to be very practical about it, it's very bad for business, right? From a there are people out there who probably would love Numenera who will never look at Numenera because they have some sort of feeling about third edition D&D.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or some other sort of thing. And, these feelings of sort of armed camps that we all fly a particular flag and you're going to betray the cause if you go and play a different game.
Right, yeah. Well, I feel that's getting less.
I do too.
Now. I think it's, a few years ago it was rough. It was like, I don't like my website, I didn't want to bother looking at it.
it definitely
it was horrible. But it is better now, and I think maybe partly this edition has helped a little with that.
I hope so. That was definitely one of the goals when I was there. And it was certainly one of those. While I was there, it was certainly something that I paid a lot of attention to. It was probably why I feel strongly about it now, as I kind of immersed myself in just kind of seeing why that was happening.
Yeah. I mean, did you play 4th edition at all?
I played 4th edition a little bit.
You like it?
It is not my chosen way to play Dungeons and
Dragons.
Yeah. But it's a good game. I mean, it's a well-designed game. But for me, it's not deep.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to the 3rd edition and the process of designing that, I mean, and the monumental task that is, how did it feel like after having brought that game out and realising you actually had succeeded in saving D&D, that this was a monster hit? Everyone pretty much universally loved the game. I mean, there weren't.
Well,
were there many?
Yeah, there were, but it was. You're right. I mean, it was a huge success. The kind of success that D&D hadn't seen since 1980s. It felt great. It's wonderful. I'm still extraordinarily proud of 3rd edition D&D and the work that we did, and 3 years of my life which were great.
And you've really put your stamp on
Yeah.
You know, not just the history of D&D, but history of, you know, the whole role-playing game industry.
Yeah.
You're right, you know, your name's stamped right there in the middle of it.
Yeah, which, you know, it's gratifying. Yeah.
You ever, you know, feel the sort of the pressure of that, like fans, you know, seeing you as, I'm struggling to find the word, seeing you as something other than perhaps you feel you are. Like, I don't know, like Gary Gygax might have felt at times, for example, or, not saying you're Gary Gygax, but, you know.
Right,
you know
I understand. Sometimes, because, you know, that's sort of what I was saying before, but I don't even really like to use the word fans because and, you know, and I've written before, actually, you know, when people talk about role-playing games celebrity, right, and stuff, that these words don't...
I think the word rockstar was used contracting with you quite a bit.
You know, but it rings false to me because that isn't the way I feel. You know, I just feel like a really fortunate gamer.
Yeah. It's not the way you come across either, which is, you know, there are game designers who
There are.
certainly cool. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
because you've always, you know, in my experience at least, I can't speak for anyone else, but you've always been very, very approachable.
Good.
I've never, you know, felt like
Always happy to hear that.
I never thought I haven't been able to sort of just walk up to you and just say, hi, Monte, how are you?
I want that to be true. Yeah.
That's partly just because of my innate charm.
It's just the
Pretty horrible in every way.
It's all you.
I mean, you flew all the way here just for this interview,
I
didn't you?
did,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really, really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for spending the time to do it.
Yeah.